Welcome back to another episode of the new Wives' Tales. I'm your host, Taylor Ellard, and today we're taking a hot take on everything that I wish I would have known as a new mom. And not everything, because there's just no way to get it all out there. But these are the top 5 things that every new mom should know and know that you're not alone. So again, with New Wives' Tales, it's just talking about stuff that I wish I would have known when I was going through having a baby for the first time or the second time. But really, it's just if I had to boil it down to the top 5 things I wish someone would have bestowed upon me in Wives' Tales form, what have you, or just stories, or hey, you should be doing this, right? We all need that friend. We all need that sister, mentor, somebody to give us some sort of advice, a nurse, someone in your birthing class, if you took a birthing class. If you don't, that's okay too. But I would just say these are the top 5 things. And first off, navigating life as a new mom is so tricky. And it's one of those things where it's you hope you have really good friends to be able to tell you the stories of this. But if you don't, then good news, you're in a really great spot. So I would say, I'm not doing one on, birthing and preparing for baby right now, at least. This is merely just you're fresh into this. What's so funny is that I remember looking at my husband and being as soon as we had my son and saying, they're just going to let us go with this tiny little thing that we know nothing. I mean, we kind of know what we're supposed to do just because we've studied and we've talked to people and we've always wanted kids, but they're letting us leave, and now we're the sole person that's supposed to take care of this. So there's that, and there's books on it, but there's no a manual and or guide that says if this then that, if they're crying in the middle of the night then that. And every baby is different, every mom is different. But let's just dive in, right? So when you first have a baby, your emotions are crazy, and they're up and then they're down, and then you're in your own head about things. And by the way, having, depression can be a totally normal thing. There's so many normalcies that aren't talked about. And we're going to dive into that in another episode, that post-baby blues situation that so many people deal with. And that's so normal. But really, the biggest thing initially is just to stay calm. I remember hearing if a baby is crying in another room, your baby could cry. And obviously, TMI, but if your baby is crying and you feel leakage from your boobs, if you are breastfeeding or in the midst of trying to figure out how to breastfeed, that's a real thing. So imagine how you and your feelings and how you react to things can impinge on your baby. So just trying to stay really calm, and that's so much easier said than done, says the most anxious person in the world. But they can read you a little bit, and there are so many ways that you can kind of train your brain into being okay, you are crying, I'm tired and you're crying, and this feels heavy and it's a lot and I'm anxious, right? There's so many things that you feel when you're going through that, but it's easy to kind of go off the handle a little. But I would say try and stay as calm as you can, and remember that little stint, that one cry, maybe they're tired, maybe they're hungry, maybe you're irritable, or it's a lot, just remember that cry and that one day is a true blip in the whole grand scheme of things. And so when I mean, everything has a season. And that's in the moment so hard to understand. Believe me, it is so hard to understand that, wow, this is a lot. I'm overstimulated, and then trying to say, okay, what do we need? And it really is basics with babies. So eat, sleep, poop, eat, sleep, poop. And, there are ways around trying to shift your brain into thinking, okay, this is just a season. And if you're calm out there and you're level-headed like that all the time, I commend you. I only wish that I could be that way. But I have had to really train my brain to think this is just a season. Everything is going to change and or shift. So don't get settled in this season and or think this is it by any means. It gets so different, so great. And it's all the things at the same time. But I remember someone telling me this is just a season and it will pass. And that was, whether it was teething or just fresh mommyhood, it will pass. So stay calm and remember that this is just a piece of it. This is just a piece of their brain getting developed, and you've trying to figure out and navigate, what does the hungry cry sound like? Can you understand the cries at all? Which with my first, I'll be honest, I couldn't. And with my second, I understood a lot more like what the true cries were all about. But it's new mommyhood, so give yourself some grace there. Okay, every mom is different. You have been, if you're a new mom, you've probably had social media. You've probably been in a world of Pinterest. You have a lot of people trying to tell you what might be right, what is gentle parenting, how to compare yourself to others. Remember this, your baby is made for you. Your baby and you being a mom, you're exactly what your baby needs. Remember that when it's tough and you're hoping, maybe things aren't going the way that you wanted, or again, living in that seasonal stuff that's just hard and a lot and exhausting. So just remember that you're exactly who your baby needed. But with that being said, there are so many tales around like what's supposed to be. And that's hard. It's all, that piece of it is just, there are all these books and you're always trying to be like, how can I be the best mom I can be? How can I be 100%? Am I doing it right? Am I saying the right thing? Am I being a good spouse? What does that look like? And so those tales of being this perfect mom simply don't exist, or they shouldn't, not here. They don't live here, because there's no such thing as a perfect mom, but you are exactly who your children need. And so I remember breastfeeding. So if you're in this breastfeeding tales of, what do I do? This isn't working. Or if I don't want to breastfeed at all. There are so many different moms out there and how they go about doing what they need to do to get the job done. Okay, so for me, and I mean, new wives' tales, right? So let me bestow upon my wives' tales. When I first had my son, I have always wanted to breastfeed. It was a dream of mine. I am not well endowed. God did not give me big ones. And so, I wasn't sure how that would affect my milk production. I was so looking forward to it. I was so excited. We had, the colostrum came, and then some milk came, and, we went through this journey, and this journey consisted of me reading all the books and listening to all the podcasts and just trying to get my milk production up and eating all the oatmeal and the peanut butter and drinking all the water and trying to do everything I could do to produce and feed my children or my son at that point. And I couldn't. And that was really tough. Like, I had to go down this really dark rabbit hole of just, doing it for nurture for a little bit and him not getting anything, and then having to follow it up with a bottle. There for a while I was pumping and trying to do what I could. And you know what? I just went down this black hole, and my husband had to tell me, you're not yourself. I don't think you're enjoying this. And it's true. He had to pull me out of that. I was in this massive slump. And so if you're out there and you're trying to figure out the breastfeeding tales, do what's right for you and your baby. I mean, fed is best. I know you've said that. We've heard that. We've read that. And sometimes that hurts, like hearing fed is best. Yeah, we know. But that hurts because you do want to breastfeed and you can't, and that's a whole thing. Then the overproduction side, which is the complete opposite of it, is a whole other thing. I've had girlfriends that have really struggled with that, and I wouldn't know much about that, but I'll have somebody come on and be able to talk about that, because that's a whole different ball game. But really, when you start to want to, you're almost near the end, you're getting ready to have a baby, and you're reading all these things about breastfeeding and what to expect and the latch and the this and the that, utilize people that talk to your friends, talk to the nurses, talk to latch people who specialize in latching. That was one thing that's one venture I did not go down. So just use what's disposable for you. The sleeping tales. Oof. Never have there ever been so many people that try and give their advice to you when you necessarily don't want it and or can't hear it or are not able to do it. So the sleeping stuff, sleep when the baby sleeps. Make sure they have enough wake stretches. What is the cry it out method? You can listen to Moms on Call. You can listen to Taking Care of Babies. Like there's just so many pieces of the puzzle. But a lot of times there is this fine line of being inundated with information and that being too much to where it's overwhelming, it's daunting. Which book did you read this out of? What did that one say? Let me write this down. I have to journal. Let me revert back to it. Let me tell my doctor. There's a lot that goes to that. And I will tell you, do what's right for you. All of this, you're going to find that like resounding factor of momming isn't perfect and it's so hard and it's so wonderful, of course. But the sleeping stuff, do what's right for you. And by the way, if you get to a point where it's too much, I mean, there are people that you can talk to about it, but I would just say, if you're able to have solid stretches and it gradually gets better and better, then you're in a good place. So, but by the way, that is another season and it will pass because my two children, 4 and 6 now, are amazing sleepers, can sleep anywhere from 10 to 12 hours a night. That looks different from other moms. Even in this season of my life, I was talking to another mom at flag football and her kids go down same time as my children, but she has to wake them up at 7 in the morning and they're still sleeping. And I was like, mine are running in my room at 5:45, just ready to start the day as loud as possible, fully dressed, by the way. So it's just, it will always be different. One mom is not copy paste. So remember, that's with sleeping as well. You just have to figure out what works for your family. What is the routine? And when they're older, they can tell you a little bit, but when you're navigating those early months and weeks, yes, maybe follow something that works for you. I have a girlfriend who sticks very much to her Moms on Call, and it works for her, and she is able to do that. So if you're a stay-at-home mom and trying to navigate it, or you're a working mom and trying to help those who are helping out while you're working figure that out, just realize it looks different for everybody. The feeding tales. Oof. Okay. So this one, I did not do baby-led weaning. I know it's really great. We did a lot of like little spoon pouches, and then I'm a nervous Nelly. So as you get to know me and get to know the new wives' tales, and I'm always erring on the side of caution because I'm a nervous Nelly. So the gagging was too much for me. There's that fine line of like, are you okay? To, oh, that's normal. And I didn't like the are you okay moment because that to me was really freaked me out. So that looks very different for all families. I feel like now, my first child is 6 years old, so I'm a little bit removed from that. I think that the pouches and the this and the that for your baby to feed your children, that's shifted a little bit since I was a first-time mom, and I think that's wonderful. I remember feeding the pouches that had like the couscous or the rice in it and the meats in it and all blended up, and I felt fine doing that because that was smooth and the fear of choking wasn't there. We also didn't have that really cool choking mechanism that the vacuum that you can put up there. By the way, I think your HSA pays for that. If you're a working mama out there and you want one of those, I think your HSA actually pays for that, which is great. But I will say the feeding stuff, that was hard. And then the what to feed, and then when to introduce the oatmeal or the stuff that the filler that you put in, and then there's that other level of like, gotta buy the organic. And remember COVID when some of this stuff was taken off of the shelves. I digress. The feeding stuff, do what's right for you. And if you've got this place where you can see, okay, now you're 6 months old, you're sitting up, you can have X, Y, and Z, and then you incorporate the this and the that, and then God forbid your child only wants one thing. I remember my mom used to tell me when I was little that I used to love carrots so much that she was always feeding me carrots because I loved it. And I turned, like, my skin hue turned a little bit orange, and she took me to the doctor and asked the doctor, what's happening here? And she was like, well, she really likes oranges and she really likes carrots. And she's like, the doctor said, yeah, that'll do it. She's eating all the carrots, and that's what's turning her skin a little bit orange, which is hilarious. So if your kids like one thing, and that'll change too. That's the fun part, when they OD on something and had too much of it, like pancakes or waffles, and they're like, ugh, I don't even want to see another pancake or waffle. I understand. You understand at your age too, right? Like if you eat something every single day, you don't want to eat anymore. So no surprises there. But when it comes to feeding, do what you got to do to feed your kids, and that will change and evolve. And you'll find that maybe your first child, if you're a second-time mom, was a little bit more picky than your second child. I mean, mine will eat everything from snap peas to green beans, like firm, uncooked green beans, to edamame. And my son is like, no, I'm good. The greens, meh. But everything in moderation. And if your kids aren't eating like amazing amounts of greens, don't be surprised. Ask your doctor, ask your pediatrician. They'll tell you that, as long as you're incorporating the right amount of nutritious and fruits and some vegetables, like smoothies are a great way to incorporate those picky eaters, some spinach in those picky eaters. They're a really great way. And obviously fruits, I mean, I feel like the one thing that people don't talk about enough is when they say, it's so expensive to have kids. You're like, yeah, childcare and the clothes and the stuff and the toys. No. The fruit is so expensive. I mean, raspberries. I'll leave it there. Raspberries. It's ridiculous. That's the expensive part about having kids. All right, so number 3, I know this is a little bit longer than I usually like. I usually like mine to be 15 to 30 minutes, but this one is, as you get to know me and who I am, I think important that I just kind of go off the rails a little. Okay, give yourself grace. I know that one's an easy one to forget, and you're always going to be bottom of the totem pole a little bit when it comes to being a mother, because you care. And I think that that's an okay thing to say, that you have to fill your cup up, though. There's that piece of it. However that looks. If it looks like breaking away for a hot second to get a massage or to go get your fingers done or a pedicure, whatever, you need to fill up your bucket a little bit. If that's exercise, even just an hour, even just going outside for a walk by yourself, by the way, and listen to a book, listen to nothing, whatever the case may be, you should do it. And remembering that there is no perfect mom. It doesn't exist. So give yourself grace. One piece is when it comes to feeling good about yourself, it takes time to feel good about yourself again. Give yourself that moment of, okay, you know what? I'm breastfeeding. You're looking the best you can do. You're doing the best you can do. Give yourself grace. You're beautiful. You just had a baby. Remember that. That's all that you need to know. You're beautiful and you just had a baby. I mean, they say, I think there's some statistic that shows that it takes twice the amount of the time that you're pregnant to be able for your body to fully, that could be more than that. I might be wrong there. It could be more than that. But it takes a really long time for your body just to snap back. And don't worry if it's your first child and you snap back and then your second child is taking a little bit longer to do it. That's completely normal. In a world where perfect is, there's a stigma. I don't want to. I love the fact that I think we're getting to a place where we can all feel, we're all empowering mentally that we should feel good about ourselves and here's what to do. But that, again, looks very different for everybody. So the other pieces, for me, one of the biggest things that I was so nervous about was taking my baby in public, and the fear of said baby crying and just putting this big temper tantrum. And I remember it sort of debilitated me a little bit from going places. And I got past that because my husband said to me one thing that was like, and he's my rock, by the way. You're probably getting some of that in this, but he said to me, other people have had kids. It's not like you're the first person to have a baby in Target or at a restaurant. And that to me was like, you're right. I shouldn't worry about that. People give you grace. You should give yourself grace about it. So don't worry. Give yourself grace. Okay, milestones. So the Wonder Years, we used that a lot, and it was nuts how spot on that was. I mean, it was like, why? Even a couple days before the true leap that the kids were supposed to go to, these developmental milestones, the patterns and the sequences and the what, it was kind of nuts how even their sleeping patterns would kind of go off, or them trying to gain independence at a certain age and them it's just crazy how the children's brains just develop, and it comes out in weird ways, and as they age it'll still come out in some unique ways, but you're realizing, oh wow, this is that, you just can't voice it. So that's been really cool to experience. So I followed the Wonder Years. I did follow taking care of babies loosely, and I mean loosely because I think it's, if you go down that rabbit hole of being too structured and too much, that the outside world and how you interact with the outside world, and or take your children places and do things that you should do to fill your cup up to make yourself happy. I think there's that fine line of going too far. So follow it loosely, and if your baby isn't doing exactly what it's I'm quoting right now, if you can't see, quoting that, if they're not doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, I wouldn't worry about it. I think, again, being a season, and or like one day, and I remember this vividly. One day we were going out and doing something, and I'm like, you've got to go down because we're going to meet X, Y, and Z for dinner. And I couldn't get a good nap in, and I'm just like, this is might ruin our night. I was so looking forward to this, drinking a glass of wine again, whatever. And it is what it is. Like, if they fall asleep in your arms, or in your husband's arms, or in their car seat while you're at the table, that's okay. Or the stroller, that's okay. One night's not going to throw it all off. But again, there's that fine line of like the outside world and how you connect with the outside world, because you're being too stringent. Just give a little, yeah? You don't have to follow all the rules. Okay, so another thing with milestones and leaps. When you go on Pinterest, you'll read Google, you'll do all the things because you're a good mom. That's because you care, not because like, oh, don't go to the Google, you'll go down this rabbit hole. Everybody goes to the Google, but don't feel like that's not end all be all. But I will say, like, there are certain things that your kids are supposed to be doing, sitting up, crawling, walking by certain times. And when they're not, you're like, what am I doing wrong? Am I holding you too much? Am I carrying you around too much? Am I not letting you have enough tummy time? Like, what is it that I'm not doing for you? Every baby's different. There's no real reason that you have to follow that either, and have this massive expectation of your tiny little human that you're raising to be held to that standard. Every kid is different. My son was not walking until like 16, 17 months. And I remember at my second baby's baby shower, I had said, to a girlfriend of mine, I had said, he's not walking yet. And I'm, 7 months pregnant, schlepping him around, and he's still not walking. And she looked at me and goes, Taylor, have you ever met a kindergartner that doesn't know how to walk and that's just crawling? And I was like, as little and simple as that is, no, I've never met a kindergartner that crawled. So remember that. Don't hold your kids to this expectation that they have to be doing something by a certain time, because that can be so many different factors. So remember these milestones, loose milestones. They don't have to be set in stone, but when they happen, it's glorious. Okay, last one is, so number 5. So these are my personal wives' tales of things that I have just, nothing like by the book. This is just my personal experience. Going outside with your children and having some sunlight, having the cold hit them, having the heat hit them, going outside and just being outside for a little while, and then coming in and eating something, and then going down for a nap. Don't go outside one day and then go outside the next day and do this. And I'm telling you, it's a world of a difference. Them going outside and just being in the sun does something to the kids that, I don't know if it like takes it out or if it's stimulation that makes them tired, but if you want to get something done for a nap, take them outside, make sure they have a full belly, and then put them to sleep. You're like, yeah, duh, feeding them is enough. But coupling that with outside time and a full belly, I assure you that you're going to get some good quality sleep time in. So Um, Another thing, and this might sound like a no-brainer, but I assure you there are a lot of people out there that aren't having conversations like this. Make sure that you and your partner have a solid communication. Just say what you mean and mean what you say. So if there's something that I have to get to the laundry, yeah, I know the laundry is typically a me thing. Are you able to just help me? Just say how you feel. Don't hold, I mean, politely, right? Don't hold anything back. I remember in the early stages of babyhood, we were swaddling my son. By the way, he loved to swaddle. I used to joke that he swaddled for so long that he would come up to his future wife as a 32-year-old and be like, "Can you swaddle me before bed?" But he loved being swaddled. And one story was he might have been like less than a week old for sure. And I had just nursed him and tried to put him back to sleep, and the swaddle was too loose. And I remember being like, I don't know how to swaddle him the best, so my husband did it. And God, he was a good swaddler. I don't know what it was. I was being too gentle. I don't know. I mean, I also barely put clothes on my son for his first year of life because I was scared of his tiny little perfect head and hurting him. So he was always like naked or in a blanket or whatever. Anyway, you live and you learn. But I remember with the swaddle situation, I'm like, babe, I can't get him to get swaddled very good. And so he swaddled him and just whipped him right around. And I'm like, oh my God, how does he do it so good? And I remember when he was still crying, I was like, oh, I think he's maybe hot. And so I start to untuck the blanket, and I'll never forget, he stood up in bed and looked at me and goes, "Do not unswaddle the baby." And it was just like a Four Christmases moment, hilarious. But I've never seen him act like that. And it was amazing because I was like, okay, you're right. You're a great swaddler. And so having a little bit of communication there, but then I don't think I've ever had so many passive aggressive comments to him in general, just like, do you think we should feed him? Do you think he's hungry? Maybe he's tired. Do you think he's tired? And then just like having those back and forth and not really sure what the heck we were doing. But hey, that is new parenting. You don't know what you're doing. We're all different. There are books out there. Your baby might not work with said book. So as a new mom, let's wrap that up. These are just new wives' tales that I wished somebody would have told me, that having grace, understanding loose milestones, knowing the breastfeeding tales, the baby tales, all the tales are they're just tales. And it might not work for you, but you know what? If it helps, that's why I'm doing it. So thanks so much for joining in. I hope you enjoyed it. New moms, give yourself some grace. You got this.